Okay, welcome to the final topic in Unit 7. We've been solving systems of equations, and the last method that we're going to use to solve systems of equations is the elimination method. We're going to call it the elimination method because instead of substituting or graphing, what we're going to do is we're going to try to eliminate one of the two variables. We're going to try to eliminate the x's or eliminate the y's so that we only have one variable to deal with, and that's going to make it easier. When the elimination method works, it works really nicely and it makes it go quicker. But unfortunately, the elimination method doesn't always work. So let's give an example. Wait a second. We already did this problem in another video. But you know what? We're still going to do the same problem, but we're going to do this problem using the elimination method instead of one of our other methods. So the sum of two numbers is 40. That means x plus y equals 40. And their difference, that's minus, is 4. Now, we're going to try to find x and y. So here's what I'm going to do first. When I use the elimination method, my first step is I want to line up the two equations on top of each other so that the x's line up and so that the y's line up. Notice on here that the x's make a nice column here, the y's make a nice column, the equals line up, and then everything else kind of lines up over here on the side. Okay, when you're doing the elimination method, your goal is get everything lined up. Okay, get everything lined up. X's, y's, equals, everything else. Okay, once you do that, you're going to see how quick and easy the elimination method can be. Okay, so watch. We're just going to take each column and we're going to add. So I'm going to do x plus x. I'm going to do y plus negative y. Oh, that's why they call this the elimination method, because what's positive y plus negative y? Nothing. And we just eliminated the y's from our problem. That is helpful. Okay, so we added x plus x. We added y plus negative y. Now we're going to add 40 plus 4. And now we have a really simple equation that we can solve pretty quickly. We just got to divide by 2 on both sides, and we already have one of our two variables. Now we just need to figure out what y is. But that's going to be pretty simple because if I get rid of all this stuff up here and go back to my original system of equations, I can take this 22 and I can plug it right there so that then I have 22 plus y equals 40. Okay, take a second, make sure you see where I got the 22 from. It was here, and since 22 is equal to x, I can plug a 22 right here. So I made it 22 plus y equals 40. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and solve this equation, and I'm going to do it like this. Now we know what x is, now we know what y is. We just solved a system of equations, and it didn't take that much effort, and it didn't take that much time because we used the elimination method. So just a recap, elimination method, line up the x's and add them. Line up the y's, add them. Line up everything else, add it. And sometimes when this happens, the x's will eliminate each other or the y's will eliminate each other. It's pretty cool when it works. All right, let's try another system of equations. When I do step 1, which is line them up, we're going to have a problem with this system of equations. We can't really use the elimination method on this system. And the reason why is they just don't really line up the way we want them to. We want the x's to line up. Oh, but that's an x and a y. And this doesn't really line up either, and the equal signs are all messed up. So this problem wouldn't work with the elimination method. We would have to use substitution or graphing on this problem. But that's okay. A lot of times it does work. So check this one out. If I line these two things up, they're a little bit off, but you get the idea. Okay, I've got my x's lined up, I've got my y's lined up, I've got everything else lined up over here. This time, if we add, nothing's gonna eliminate. I would have 9x plus 2y equals 18. So that didn't really get us anywhere. So add each time, we're going to subtract each time. Sometimes with the elimination method, you add by columns. Sometimes you subtract by columns. Now watch what happens when we subtract. When I do 5x minus 4x, I'm going to get 1x, correct? Then, when I do y minus y, now I have elimination. So, that's why we're going to use subtraction on this one instead of addition. When I do 10 minus 8, I get 2. And what do you know? 1x is 2. We already have our solution there. X equals 2. But we're not all the way done. We've got to finish this by figuring out what y equals. Remember, you can do that by taking this 2, since x equals 2, and we can plug it here. Or we could plug it here if we wanted to. Either way, we should be able to solve for y. Okay, I'm going to use this first equation, and if we put a 2 right here, it's 5 times 2, which is 10, plus y equals 10. And now all I have to do is minus 10, boom, 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 2 and 0. That's my solution to 0 for x and y, and I just solved the system using the elimination method. So, just to give you a little recap here, sometimes you subtract. Sometimes you add. Okay? But the elimination method only works when x's are lined up, y's are lined up, and numbers are lined up. And even then, it only works when the coefficient here, which is a 1, matches the coefficient here, which is a 1. Okay? So if you had a system that looked like this, 4x minus 14y equals 11, and 33x plus 2y equals 12, you couldn't really do an elimination by adding or subtracting, because 4 plus 33 doesn't cancel, 4 minus 33 doesn't cancel, and 14 and 2, or negative 14 and 2, don't really cancel by adding or subtracting. So you couldn't really use the elimination method on this problem unless we did a little trick. And I'm going to show you a little trick. Let's say we have x plus 2y equals 10 and 3x plus 4y equals 8. When we line those up, nothing matches. I have an x and a 3x, and I have a 2y and a 4y. So I can't really add them all, and I can't really subtract them all. But watch what I can do. I can turn this x into a 3x. No, you can't. Well, I can if I multiply this whole equation by 3. If I multiply that whole equation by 3, I'm going to triple everything. So the x becomes a 3x. The 2y gets multiplied by 3 and becomes a 6y. The 10 gets multiplied by 3 and becomes a 30. And now if I line this one up over here and keep the 3x plus 4y equals 8, I can now subtract and get 3x minus 3x, which cancels out. And then I can subtract because I subtracted here, right? So 6y minus 4y is 2y, and 30 minus 8 is 22. And now I just have to divide by 2, boom, 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 boom. And I'm halfway done with this system of equations. I think you know from now how you could use this to plug in back up here to find x. Okay? So sometimes to use the elimination method, you've got to take a whole equation and multiply the whole thing by something in order to make a match so that we have an elimination. Okay? Now, we could have, instead of making the x's match, we could have made the y's match. In that case, we wouldn't have multiplied this whole equation by 3. We would have multiplied this whole equation by 2. And if you did that, you'd get 2x plus 4y equals 20. And then this equation would still be 3x plus 4y equals 8. And you could now subtract so that this 4y and this 4y cancel each other out, so that 4y minus 4y basically goes away. And then we would subtract here, and I'd get negative 1x equals, no, that's positive 22. And so you divide by negative 1, and you could have canceled out the y's and solved for x as well. That's kind of advanced stuff. And if this last example problem was a little bit tricky for you, don't worry too much about it. All right, I want you to try this practice problem. It might look familiar. It should look familiar. We've already done this system of equations, but we did this one using substitution. I think that you'll find this easier if you try this using elimination. And you can add, or you can subtract. Try it and see what happens. See if you can eliminate the x's or eliminate the y's and make this an easier problem. All right, I got one more practice problem for you to do. This is the more difficult variety of the elimination method because you're going to have to take this whole equation right here and you're going to have to multiply it by something so that you either have matching x's or matching y's. See what you can come up with. And if this problem is a little tricky for you, don't worry about it. All right, that's the elimination method. And at this point, we should have a pretty good grasp of how to solve system of equations. So good job. Thanks for working hard. Thanks for persevering. I will see you tomorrow.